So Alena said she had to chip in for a colleague who didn't feel well. We had someone who couldn't reach us, couldn't come to the meeting, so I chipped in with this presentation. So when you see typos, when you see when, not if, when you see those, consider that I did the slides in a hurry. But I had built them. They say 3 things about routing you should be paying attention to right here, right now. I built them for almost the same reason for DKNOG in Bahrain. So a couple of the things here are not really newish, but still relevant. So the idea was to prepare something that would show what is changing, what is happening in the world in routing, because I know I now work at the Internet Society. I actually say it in the next slide, but there are always new things happening, and maybe you are not paying attention because you're busy with your day job. And this can serve as a presentation that gives you a quick overview of things you might want to take a look into. So, I'm Max. I work at the Internet Society. I'm not representing the Internet Society here. I'm speaking on my own capacity. I care about the internet. I care about the internet so much I have my own ASN I run at home. I'm lucky I can run BGP with my neighbor. I have a neighbor that's also a network engineer. So we run BGP between our houses. Wives and girlfriends don't really like that, but that's a different story. And so here I am. Now, the first one is AS sets need improvements. We all know this. It's a long dated thing, but what is it that is happening right now about this? So we've all seen attempts at improving AS sets, but what are AS sets before we start? AS sets are a type of object that tell us who is composing the customer cone of a certain network. What filters should I set up for that? And helps, and AS sets help everyone understand, or building filters, or understanding what should I expect from that network coming towards me. So they define a customer cone, and you should have an AS set. If you have an autonomous system, you should have an AS set, even if it's just including your own AS, because you want to prepare for the future. And everything should be listed on PeeringDB. Yesterday we had a nice talk about PeeringDB. But so I use AS set to generate prefix filters. I use BGPQ4. Job is not here; it's too early in the morning yet. But I'll be pointing to things he has done quite a lot in this presentation. So it's a pity he's not in. You use AS sets to build prefix lists. So you check who are the customers of a certain AS. You build a list of AS numbers, and from there you get all the root objects that contain the prefixes that you want to put into your prefix list. So you build them carefully. But what is the problem? Anyone can create an AS set in the IRR with any name. So at one point, a few months ago, someone created AS Google and AS Facebook, and they made them empty. So if you weren't paying attention at which sources you were using in your scripts, you would get an empty prefix list for Google, for Facebook, for Meta. And that broke a lot of automation. We saw yesterday breaking automation is quite common, but this was a very edge case in this. So what can you do to try to avoid this? What can we all do? Proposed solution: enforce the creation of hierarchical AS sets. This has been discussed on the RIPE routing working group list. Hierarchical AS sets take the form of AS number, colon, AS dash your name. This helps prevent basically what I would call AS set theft. If you want to create something like this, you need to have the authentication you need to pass authentication for the ASN, for the AS object, OTNAM object, which means in turn, you need to be authenticated for it. So when we go to then peering DB, because everything should go in peering DB, and I have an example in the next slide, prefix the source database. So you make sure you point people to the correct database, in this case RIPE, and then you point to the AS set in the hierarchical scheme. So this way, you're sure that no one can, in any other source, create, in any other database, create an AS set that has the same exact name as the one you have here. And then the additional solutions would be RPKI. We have 5 repositories against 30 plus IRRs. So everything is simplified, and then those are sources you can all trust. And there's a trust mechanism embedded in RPKI. And then there's work being done with ASPA, with AS Group or AS Cones. I'll go into ASPA in a moment, which intend to bring, so this work intends to bring for AS Cones and AS Group feature parity. So the idea is to translate AS sets into RPKI. So we have sources we can trust fully, and we can sign all these objects. And then with ASPA, we add also capabilities to figure out how an AS path should be. I'll go into that in a moment. Now, the other suggestion I have is if you have your AS set, you create a new hierarchical style AS set, copy the data in there, and then put it on peering DB. Well, I didn't do it the fully correct way because it still says AS58280. I don't show the source. I don't say RIPE : but then in this case, it's implied because you would only find AS58280 under the RIPE database. That's my personal ASN. So far, so good? Yes. So I told you I would talk about ASPA in a moment, and then in December, we had the very first ASPA objects in the wild. They were created. So you might know this guy who tweeted about it. Or, well, this was a tweet probably. Very first ASPA objects that have started to appear in the global RPKI. So software has been built that's now capable of adding ASPA objects. There's the whole chain that now works. So validators now should accept ASPA objects. You can provide these objects also in the global RPKI, so you can see them. And here we go. But what is ASPA? ASPA objects are RPKI objects signed, and the goal is to indicate who your upstreams are. So you say, I'm only going to send my BGP announcements to these BGP speakers, to these ASNs. So when I have a list of networks that provide this kind of information, I can start building what would be like my expected AS path that I would see in BGP. And whenever I receive a BGP update, I can check it against the separate database of ASPA, and then I can figure out if that is a correct AS path, if someone is trying to inject some routes or leak, or someone is leaking some other routes using data that is verifiable that is in RPKI. So this should help in identifying leaks, identifying hijacks, because if my information doesn't match what I see in ASPA, or vice versa, what I have in ASPA doesn't match what I have in BGP, then I can flag the route. And that's actually what has happened. So we can do a path validation, identify hijacks and leaks. So that is what has actually happened. There was the first route leak prevented by ASPA that was seen, that was checked. And sorry, this happened about a month ago. This was an email from Claudio Jeker, one of the developers at RSSF working on OpenBGPD. And he said that by chance, he got this. He got this message showing that there was a route leak that was identified, the very first one seen by ASPA in the wild. As you can see, there is a there is a sign here. There is an exclamation mark. And the exclamation mark in there says that the ASPA validation hasn't passed. So this is an ASPA invalid next to the origin validation. The V means this is RPKI origin validation is fine. So we know that AS, that's 945, but it was a different ASN that was supposed to, well, 945 is fine. It's the originator. And there was a leak somewhere that changed the AS path, and ASPA prevented that or showed that that was not supposed to be. So this is what ASPA is supposed to be doing. And how did this happen? OpenBGPD and RPKI client already support ASPA validation, thanks to work by the Route Server Support Foundation. Again, it's a pity that Job is not here in the room to get more credit. But if you want to read more about this, this work done with ASPA, so what happened in the route leak in this case, there's an article written by a colleague of mine on the Manners blog. Oh, these are two great news, but then there's a bad news. We're almost reaching 1 million entries in the full routing table v4. This was already in December. I have some of one of my routers. We're reaching 933,000. We reached 933,000 networks. So we're close to 1 million. What happens when we reach 1 million? I didn't hear any kaboom. Sorry? Chip makers get to earn more money. That's possible, yes, but out of TCAM. There you go. Yes, what I wrote here is you might want to check the here. Pay attention to your routers and line cards. Reconsider the split between V4 and V6, although V6 is growing as well. And I see Job has entered the room. Job, I gave credit for your work like 3-4 times already. And you missed it. You can watch it on YouTube. Or consider upgrading your platform. So check the split between V4 and V6, and well, MPLS, EVPN, and so on. Or consider upgrading your platform. I can't predict how long it will take exactly to reach the 1 million. I know this week, maybe Elena, can you confirm it? There were more allocations by the REP NCC because part of the waiting list was approved. So you might see a slight increase in the number of routes announced in the next few days as people received new allocations and that are small or /24s. You might see a quick small increase in the size of the routing table as well. But you might want to take some time to prepare for when we reach exactly 1 million. And then bingo. Then another good news is RPKI publishing parent now is available as production in RIPE. So if you run delegated RPKI, so you need to have also what's called a publication point. It's basically a web server, to simplify it a bit, rsync, where you generate your objects and then you publish them so that people running relying parties, people running RPKI client, routinator, Fort can download this data, verify it against the chain of trust, and then give you a VRPs. Basically, if you run delegated RPKI, you have to run a publication point, but that's additional work you would need to do. So the RFCs allow for publication at a different point, and then the RIRs, not all the RIRs, but I think RIPE, ARIN, and APNIC, they allow the publication of your data through their systems, so you don't have to take care of that. You generate your ROAs, and then you upload them to a publication point set by your RIR. RIPE NCC just announced that this is now production ready, so you can use it. It's very useful if you have, very useful to run delegated RPKI if you have address space from different regional registries, so you can manage them from one central point. You run, there's unfortunately only one software to run it. Well, there's more, but the only production ready one is Krill. And then once you run that, you need to publish your data, and you can do it via a third-party service that's run by your RIR. So you piggyback on the RIPE-NCC infrastructure, and that's it. So now it is available. You run your Krill instance, set up delegated RPKI on the LAR portal, and then activate publish in parent, and then you should be good to go. And that's simpler than running it yourself. Then we're a bit ahead of time, but the last bit of my presentation, something I thought about yesterday that would be interesting to discuss for 5 minutes today, is the fair share proposal in the EU. How many of you have heard about this before? Not many. So I'm mentioning it here because this could impact routing everywhere. What is this about? So ISPs have started complaining that they need more money to build more infrastructure. But where are they going to find it? So their idea is, oh, let's ask the content providers and the OTTs to pay for the bandwidth they use on our infrastructure. So the idea, there's a proposal, there's a consultation going on right now. There's a questionnaire to fill in. It's about like 70 questions that are very articulated, so it would take some time to fill it in. But basically the idea is that by law, if this passes, by law, as an ISP, you would be allowed to go and ask payment from the content providers to deliver their traffic to your users. Now, you might like this or not. I'm just discussing now the impact it might have on routing. There is a similar law in effect in South Korea since 2016. If you look at how participation at IXPs is in South Korea, you'll see that there aren't many content providers at IXPs in South Korea. So most of that peering happens actually in Japan. So imagine, I can imagine a situation where, chances are that some content might leave IXPs and start peering outside of the EU to avoid incurring fees. So where would this go? Where would this peering go if we're here? In Korea, it went to Japan. But when we talk about the whole of the EU, then you would have, the exception would be Switzerland, the UK, Norway. No, not Norway, but Switzerland, UK. And then probably it would be the Balkans then as another point. So this is something we should all pay attention to. I know RIPE-NCC is working on the issue together with other organizations. EuroIX sent a letter to the European Parliament to discuss this. They even got a response recently. My colleagues at Internet Society are also working on it. Well, I'm also involved. So there's a lot we can do to figure out how this can be made so that it makes sense, or maybe not at all. Yes, we have a question, a comment. Fergus, can you bring the microphone, please?
Hi, I'm Alexi from Finland again. So this is an internet governance issue, and there are internet governance fora in most EU countries and European countries. So I suggest you are active in yours, because there are other issues like this, like content censorship and equality issues and stuff like that, that also are discussed in these internet governance events, and the leaders usually and the lawmakers usually actually follow these things. So that is also a very good avenue to get our voice heard so that those people don't ruin our internet.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Tom Klaufler. I guess I'm hogging the mic again. A couple of comments on the fair share thing. First of all, it's primarily mandated by Breton, who is the commissioner of the Internal Trade Agency. It should be noted that he's the former CEO of Orange, also known as France Telecom.
Yep.
I'll leave it up to you to kind of decide what that means.
I was trying to be more politically correct in my presentation.
It's with the questionnaire, I highly advise everyone to fill this in. You're not obligated to answer all of the questions.
Yep.
There's also a free form section that allows up to, I think, 5 pages-ish, or X amount of words, I forgot the amount of words, that you can then add as additional information that needs to be read. BEREC, which is a organization that represents most of the interests of, I think, everyone here, is actively against this, combined with as well the Dutch as well as the German governments, who have both gone very clearly against this. This is one of the bigger policy fights we're going to see for the internet within Europe for the next couple of years. So I think it's in everyone's best interest that you do engage on this, because if we don't, it's not going to go away.
Yep. Yes.
You know, those of us who are old enough may remember that this happened 20 odd years ago, the first time they tried it. So this is their second time coming back, and they will keep coming back because that's what telcos do. I can say that. I don't work for ISOC.
No, I mean, yeah, if that was the case. Yeah, so do you have any questions?
First of all, thank you, Max.
You're welcome. Thanks.
And then...
Hi, I'm Alexei from Trex. I had a question about your ASPA slide. So
it's good we got Job now. So
yeah, I wanted to wait for him to arrive so that he can answer the question on your behalf. So the slide says that you, well, actually, can you go back to this slide?
Sure. Now, how do I, yeah. Which one?
The one.
Is this about the ASPA?
One earlier.
One earlier.
No, one more.
One more.
One more. One more. Yeah, here. The goal is to indicate who your upstreams are. So what happens to peers? I mean, if you peer with Hurricane Electric, they're practically an upstream for you, even if you just peer with them.
Yeah, so I tried to be concise here, but the idea is you express who your upstreams are, and then Job, correct me if I'm wrong. Now, you have the chance here, please do. Now, you can also express who your peers are. There are different types of relationships you can, well, go Job.
Job Snijders, one of the developers and authors of the ASPA standards and software. You only specify who your upstreams are, but it's not about who you send most traffic to or who you receive most routes from. So from the perspective of, hey, Hurricane is almost like an upstream, but they are my peer, they still are your peer. They're not expected to propagate your routes to their upstreams. Therefore, you would not list them in the ASPA object. So the data field is very simple. If it's not your upstream, don't put it in. Don't put in IX route servers. Don't put in your peers. Don't put in your customers. Only your upstreams.
So I've quit. Any other questions?
Not even a little one?
We still have 15 minutes until the break.
Oh, here we are,
last one.
For your mentioning of, I'm Lasse from Italia. For your mentioning of AS sets, maybe good to clarify I think that was obvious, but clarify in the beginning that you are talking about the IRR
Yes.
ASZ object and not the BGP announcement ASZ. That
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I mentioned the IRR one.
I was confused on the first slide, but then you
okay.
clarified.
Okay, okay.
Another question here.
Arman from Mila in Iceland. So, being a small island in the middle of nowhere, I'm come from the telco part, the largest MPLS network on the island, which is maybe not that large in the grand scheme of things. Regarding caching, streaming services, and blocking stuff, and controlling what you have on your network, it's extremely complicated because for us, it's not really good that some of the larger companies don't support caching, and they don't provide caching services at all. So we are heavily hit by, let's say, a Champions League night, something like that. So we have to. This raises the cost of our internet infrastructure quite a bit, since all our connections are through subsea cables. So for us, it's not, because if we stop it, we are not giving our customers a good service. Then basically it's something we cannot do. So for me, it's not a thing of censorship, but partnership. So I would like to see more in regards to these providers pushing their own caching engine, or hiring their own caching services to deliver to these remote places. Because I can understand this might be a problem for small ISPs in Europe, but this can be a horrible problem when you're in a remote island, like us.
Yeah, can you imagine that being a problem when you're so remote and you have to buy capacity over, well, the marine cables?
Absolutely, absolutely, and they are quite expensive there.
Yeah.
It's not the same as buying from Dublin to New York or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's much worse.
Yep. Thank you for the comment. Anyone else? No? Then thank you
Last
very
call.
much.
Thank you again very much. Thank you,
Thank
Max.